Welcome to another episode of the Brian Green Show, where we talk about faith, family, and business. Today's guest, we have Jordan Harbertson, a serial entrepreneur who co-founded Mountain Ops in 2014 and grew it into a leading performance supplement brand for the hunting and outdoor community. Since then, he's launched Black Flag, a new energy supplement and outdoor lifestyle brand, while also serving as a strategic advisor and investor across companies like Dude Perfect, Nomadic, and Belgium Boys. He's built his career on branding, direct to consumer, and turning outdoor passions into thriving businesses. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the show.
My dad ingrained in me always. He's like, son, he's like, your attitude will always determine your altitude in life. And that was like a staple and a statement. And like, I always took that to heart because I knew he always would tell me, he's like, it's just your attitude, son. I am sick and tired of CAC. I'm sick and tired of AOV. I'm sick and tired of CPA. I'm sick and tired of all the acronyms that measure the success of a business. If you want to have a successful business, focus on the number one thing that matters. PEOPLE. In order for anything to grow, it requires pain. Pain is imminent. And it's one of the things that we as humans try to run away from or try to avoid. And yet it's the only path to progress. It's the only path to growth. Pain is essential.
George, thanks for so much for being on the podcast today, brother. Just super thankful for your friendship. For those that don't know, Jordan and I go way back. We played hoops together
Yes,
and
sir.
went to Davis High, and Jordan was a really good friend of mine and supported me in my basketball career. And just super thankful to have you on the podcast today. How you doing today, brother?
Doing good, dude.
Yeah.
I have the one thing that I think comes to mind, like the first thing I think of when I think of you is I just constantly hear BG for three, dude. BG for three. Like for anyone that knows this, if you've listened to Brian's podcast long enough, you know his love for basketball and for how it transformed and changed his life. But he changed the game. Before Steph Curry was the chef and serving up threes, BG was on the scene doing it at Davis High School. And me and our friends were all lined up on the sidelines in the bleachers with the shortest shorts, like John Stockton style, bandanas, a mix of like, we had like Dream Team jerseys, Utah Jazz jerseys, Davis High jerseys, and we called ourselves the Fellowship, right? Because we're all
Yeah.
big Lord of the Rings fans.
Yeah.
And dude, I would argue of 2000, let's call it 2004, 2005, right? Then did we
Yeah.
graduate in 2006?
Yeah.
I'd say 2005, 2006, home court advantage for Davis High. You came into our house, you did not leave very well. We were the hardest crowd to deal with. And we traveled as a team, like our whole group and everybody we got would travel to every other school. And even though we had our student section, right, that they put us in, we were as loud as theirs, dude. Oh, those
Yeah.
were such good days.
Dude, they were good, man. And it brings me back. Like, I just can't be more grateful for it might sound really small for someone listening, but having that support. And I think it's a good segue. And I have a question that I want to ask you, but like, I don't know if you remember the Northridge game when
Yeah, I'll never
we
forget it.
we were basically like whoever won the game won region. And I'm pretty sure you guys like dressed up in suits, if I'm
Yes.
not mistaken, and had
Yep.
your kinda get up underneath, right? And, for those listening, I mean, this is obviously high school basketball, but it mattered in our lives at the time, and, Northridge was great, and you guys came, and that was probably the most packed, I don't know, gym at that point in time, and, I was fortunate to make the game-winning shot, and,
Dude.
um
That was one of those quintessential moments. I know it's a memory for you forever in your life,
Yeah,
but that monumental moment for all of us because it was like this culmination, right,
yeah,
of big moments. But then when you hit that shot and we beat Northridge, because dude, the amount of trash talk and the amount of and interesting enough, one of the best players on Northridge's team, and unfortunately his name escapes me right now, but he was my son's competitive basketball coach
Okay.
about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And dude, I made sure he remembered, and he hasn't forgotten. Dude, he hasn't forgotten.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
well,
like, "Go
now
Darts, baby."
yeah, that was well, the good times, and now, like, it's crazy to think that I got a notification that it's our 20-year reunion this summer,
Reunion.
man.
That's gnarly, dude. That's right,
I'm
'06, so we're
It's
2026. I
crazy.
haven't I haven't been to any of them. Have you
Yeah.
been to any of them yet?
No, I
Yeah, I
haven't.
haven't been.
I haven't. I mean, I know when we were riffing a little bit before I hit record, like, I everyone went on missions, and I didn't at the time, and so, naturally, I just kinda started I played hoops and got to Cache Valley, and I haven't acquainted myself with as many people from or reacquainted as with as many people, and I don't live in Kaysville, like are you still in Kaysville?
I'm in Farmington, yes.
Okay,
I'm back in Farmington,
okay,
so I'm
okay.
I'm similar to you where I think I've kept in touch with our group of friends.
Yeah.
There's probably 2 that I've been able to stay in touch with. Everybody else has either moved out of state, lives
Mhm.
are where they are, and
Yeah,
we have things in common or we don't. So it's
yeah.
just wild how life is. But at that time, like you said, the gratitude that you had because of the brotherhood that we all had and what how meaningful it was to support you guys and to be proud as like, students of our school. And now I think it was so cool because that was one of the things for me that I had to learn a hard lesson that I didn't that I forever will likely regret. I do regret. I remember Coach Welks. I remember. Do you remember that year when we did the basketball camp where we all went down to Lehigh
Yeah.
and basically you had everybody who played Final Court was basically going to be who made the team, and everybody kind of knew it. And we're in the summer; it's not even tryouts. I was so young and naive. I didn't understand the gravity of that, as well as like we all, you, me, and it's basically the Farmington kids and the Kaysville kids all made relative Final Court. And I remember talking to Coach Welk after the game, and I had a great game and I had a great camp, and I was one of the better players at Farmington, so I thought I had a spot on the team. And I remember Coach Welk pulled me aside and he basically told me, "Hey, yeah, so I already have the team picked." And I'm thinking to myself, "Well, hey, but like we haven't had tryouts yet, right?" And he's like, "No, I already have the team picked. I've got my players basically on JV and varsity and where I want everyone." And he's like, "I'd always played a 1-2." And he's like, "If you want to be on the team, you're gonna have to play a 3." And I'm like looking at my height and everybody else, and I'm like 3-4, like I've never played that position before. And dude, I went into that summer, dude, and I was discouraged. And dude, I didn't even show up for tryouts for Davis High, and that's one of the things like that I tell my son now, because he's made the basketball team at Farmington Junior High. They actually won the championship this season for
Mm.
the first time in Farmington since I was there, and so I look back on that with a bit of regret because I gave up and I didn't give myself a shot and I didn't take the opportunity that was given to me because he still said, "You have a chance, but you've got to like spend your summer and this time doing these things in order for you to have a spot on the team." And then because of pride and ego, which got in my way, dude, the greatest obstacle in anybody's way, I didn't even show up for tryouts. But I will say, regardless of that, being in the bleachers and supporting you and Sprague and everybody on the team, right? Like I had as much fulfillment and joy as I did if I was on the court, so
Yeah.
I do not regret that one bit. Like
Well,
those are cherished times.
we needed your southpaw jumper, dude. Anyone that doesn't know southpaw, that's a lefty. I mean, you're a lefty, right? You were a
Oh,
lefty.
tried and true, baby.
Yeah, you're lefty, and dude,
Yep.
your shots freaking buckets, man. We needed you our senior year, actually.
I always loved Coach Downs from Farmington Junior High. He
Yeah.
always would say to people, he's like, Jordan never saw a shot he didn't like.
Yeah,
is how
dude.
is how he'd say
That's
it.
awesome. Who was on your team? Who came from
Farmington.
Did Matt Reese come from Farmington? Who came from Farmington that was
So we
successful?
had so you guys who moved on to the team was Clark Wilkinson,
Yeah,
right?
okay. Yep.
And then Robbie Taylor. So our two bigs moved on. And then Matt. Um, and I honestly think that was it, at least from our grade, right? And then I think, the next group that came in, you had Chaz, you had Trevor, um, and I'm trying to who else they had on that squad that came like that next year.
What
But yeah,
well,
only a few Farmington kids made it because it was like your guys' squad, like Kaysville, it was you, Stratton, um, you had Trevor
Martineau,
Sprague, Martineau,
Alex Hill,
um,
Nate Law.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
dude.
I mean, it was the Kaysville Knights. They
Yeah,
moved right
yeah,
into the
yeah,
Davis Darks.
yeah,
A few
yes.
Huskies, a few Huskies got a job, but the rest of us didn't. So
But some of y'all went to Viewmont though, like Braden,
yeah, Slay Hooper, Davis
Hooper,
Exxon,
Davis, Exxon,
um,
dude.
Spencer went there as
Yes.
well. And
Spencer,
I'm trying
not
to remember the
Hatch.
other who
I
was
can't
the
remember
other
his
guy
last
that
name.
they had there. But yeah, dude, it was a trip. Now obviously we got Farmington High School, so Farmington goes to Farmington. But yeah, it was. I mean, and you remember how much we hated the Vikings.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like, real hate. Like
yeah,
we hated those guys.
yeah, dude. Well, I think, similar to how, um, what we're talking about, like, the support that I felt from you and the fellowship and just people in my life. I mean, in talking earlier, like, I've been really blessed with good people around me, and, I haven't always made the best decisions, but there's things in my life that people have really influenced me to just get where I'm at today and continue to grow. And in preparation for chatting with you, I mean, hats off to you, man, for the grit and the hard work and just the things you've been able to accomplish in business. And I think what's on my mind is who has like been like your fellowship? Who, when you look back over the last 20 years or like post mission and when you started the marketing agency and now Mountain Ops and so on and so forth, like who is that one person or few people that have been most influential in your success as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think, you know, people might say, oh, that's the typical answer that most maybe people say, but I'm like, my dad. Like if I can explain my father to everyone, Scott Career Harbertson, um, I come from a family line and lineage of entrepreneurs. Like this in the Harbertsons, this goes back to my dad's dad, and his dad, and his dad. Like we have been for generations really self-made or relatively like entrepreneurial. And my great grandpa, Brigham Harbertson, he grew relatively through a depression, right? He was through the depression. My grandpa lived in the depression as a kid growing up, but his dad figured out a way to make it during the worst time in American history. So my grandpa comes out of that. And my grandpa, he actually, if you know locally, Mr. Mack, the suit company.
Yeah.
So my grandpa and Mr. Mack were partners and started that together, which that was a very successful like suit kind of warehouse situation or men's warehouse if you want to correlate what Mr. Max is for everybody who doesn't know. But then he also started a logistics company and then he started a fastener company. And so then go to the next generation, my dad and his brother, they ended up they went to BYU, and then my uncle graduated in accounting, and my dad ended up deciding not to graduate because he saw an opportunity to start a business and he convinced his brother to come do it with him. And they started what became THB, Nuts and Bolts, and that stood for the Harbertson Brothers. And they did that and had a tremendous amount of success. In fact, your history of working for Icon, right?
Yep.
Fitness,
Yep.
and THB did all the fasteners, nuts and bolts, washers, you name it. They put all of those machines together in the kits for all of their products. That was one of their big, large accounts. It's kind of a, circle between you and I in business and relationships. And so, for a long time, I grew up as that next generation, literally watching my dad without understanding the real concept of entrepreneurship, I was taught it very subliminally. And he often gave me a lot of counsel, a lot of advice, and really guided me and steered me towards what I already imminently knew within myself I wanted to do. I couldn't My personality couldn't be told what to do. In fact, I always encourage people to tell me I can't do it because that just gives me fuel to go do it. I'd rather hear you say I'm not capable of doing it than tell me I am, because that's what gives me the motivation and the chip on my shoulder to go and accomplish great things, because I love to prove everybody wrong and I love to prove myself right. It's kind of like that Michael Jordan mentality, right? It's like I just always wanted to win, but I always knew in my heart that that was probably my path. And so I started working for my dad. And when I was working for him, literally, I had a few jobs down at THB where I first started in basically the assembly line, where we would assemble the kits for like all the basketball hoops that Lifetime makes. I'd assemble all the workout equipment, stuff. Then I moved into shipping and receiving. Then I worked in the shop where I actually built and created custom fabrication for nuts and bolts and washers. And it was kind of cool. But as I was going through that process, my dad's hope was that maybe one of his sons would take over the business. And I just didn't have a passion for that. I just wasn't stoked about nuts and bolts like my dad was. But I remember the lunches that I had with my dad while I was working for him at THB, and all the mentoring and all the guidance that he gave me, both as a father, but as a boss too, because he was my boss. And so he was my first boss. And then I would say one of the next most influential people that really influenced me in my path was a man named Rob Corsetti. Because as I kind of was transitioning out of working for my dad, and I got into photography, like I started to like just take pictures, and I got into Photoshop. I did what we all did back then. I used, I think it was Kazaa or Napster, to download an illegal pirated copy of Photoshop because I didn't want to pay the whatever it would
Yeah.
cost for it. I
Yeah.
think I destroyed so many of my dad's computers with viruses. I felt bad, but he was so done with me, because he'd be like, "Dude, what is this? How do we keep getting viruses?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just something's going on with the computer." And he's like, "It's always you. Like, everyone else doesn't know how to do what you do on computers." But, um, Rob Corsetti was another really influential person, because he actually became my mentor for what my career path evolved into and really took off from, which was marketing. He owned a marketing agency, and we worked for the Easton family. And so the Easton family was in sports, which I love, you love, we adore. So they owned their sports line. They also had an outdoor line of hunting and archery. Um, and I got to come into an opportunity to be basically mentored and really an apprenticeship under him, starting at graphic design and working my way up into a marketing director over a couple of these brands within the Easton family of brands. And then from there, it just continued to take off. But I'm by nature a very creative person, so I thrive within the bounds of having no boundaries, right? And being able to find where the edges are and figuring that out, and then breaking them and creating new boundaries, or saying, let's set a new way instead of just take what everyone says is the way. And so Rob Corsetti was another really meaningful and influential person. And another person that really gave me some help at a very young age, because at the same time that I was getting apprenticeship and mentorship from Rob Corsetti, because at 14 years old is when I started working for him. That's my career started at 14. Most kids weren't even thinking about their careers back then. I had started my career before I was even in high school. And Coach Downs, my coach at Farmington Junior High, was a huge mentor who taught me basically the principles of humility and being humble and being a team player. He really, really ingrained. He always would say, like, don't derail the train. Right. That was always his big thing for all of us, was like, hey, once we get things going, once we're on the tracks, like, don't derail the train. Like, have a mission, have a goal, have a purpose, have a direction, and get on the tracks and stay on them, and do whatever you can to never ever derail yourself from your own potential. And that was always really just hit home for me of what I believed that I could become or that I could achieve. That I think at a very young age, again, I didn't fit in with a lot of friends because I talked about things that people are like, why are you talking about business? Or why are you talking about like the future? Like, we're just trying to figure out where our next meal is, bro. You know, like
Yeah.
we're just wanting to play like some FIFA on on the PlayStation. Like,
Yeah.
stop with all this like weird. Don't speak your language. And I found myself not fitting in with some friends and friends groups relatively because I was thinking about what was coming and what was next instead of just being present, which is something that I've struggled with because I'm a big visionary.
Mhm.
And as a visionary, you're always living out in front of everything else and you're trying to build the future. You're trying to imagine what that's going to look like and be like. But I would say out of just a quick top three, those three gentlemen really significantly influenced my life at a very early age that in, in in total, like, set me on a path that has changed my life,
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, well, what's funny is while we were playing System Link Halo and playing poker, Jordan was
Yes.
building businesses.
I mean, dude, I was happy to show up every now and then and do a little smoke screen or a little
Yeah.
teabag or whatever,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
dude, there was not everybody that's watching this podcast, like, you guys all remember the good times of relative corresponding rooms, a big Ethernet cable that connected the Xboxes, and if we
Uh,
could have a big screen or a screen,
yeah,
and, we're playing Blood Gulch,
yep,
Capture the Flag,
yeah,
and it's two-shot headshot or a shotgun to the head, and it's
yeah,
over, dude, like, Halo 1
um,
changed all of our lives
yeah,
forever, and
I
then,
do,
yeah, dude, we all got into poker too. Remember
yeah,
that?
um,
Dude.
it's cool hearing that, and, another cool thing that tied us together was my 2nd mission president was your Uncle Rob. Um,
Yes.
so
Yep.
he was a shout out to President Harbertson. He was an unbelievable. Him and his wife Vicky are unbelievable.
Vicky. She's the
Um,
greatest.
she's awesome. You know, I think one one takeaway is how influential your dad was, and I'm curious, like, can you walk me through? Because I'm trying to navigate like being a good example to my kids through just example, and then also finding time to sit down with them and talk about life, talk about things I've learned. How did your dad, it feels like he was very hands-on and there were a lot of sit-down talks. Like how did he, being an entrepreneur, running a business, how did that look like in the Harbertson home? And what was, if you could take away one thing that your dad taught you that you want to carry that legacy into your kids, what would that be?
Yeah. In the Harvardson home with dad, thankfully because he was an entrepreneur and relatively because he was a successful one, he was relatively good at prioritizing family. He had, religious responsibilities, family responsibilities, business responsibilities. And then eventually he got into public service. He was actually the mayor of Farmington for 8 years. We can thank Mayor Harbertson for Station Park. That's his legacy, Station Park that's here. And um, but through all of those different responsibilities and things pulling at him, my dad was always very present when he was home. And he was always there for us kids and to support us. Like I don't remember relatively a game that my dad wasn't there to see me or to support me and to be there. And my dad, he always said, my grandpa. So, and here's where the Harbertsons correlate again. My grandpa Harbertson had brought Utah State Aggies their one and only championship back at
No
Madison
way.
Square Garden. Yeah, and he made the game-winning shot in Madison Square Garden for what then was the, what do they call that tournament before the NCAA took over, the NIT?
NIT, yeah.
So the NIT was it before the,
No way.
NCAA, and so if you go back, and I'll send you some of this, but my Robert Harbertson, my grandpa, played for Utah State Aggies, took them to their one and only championship, NIT at Madison Square Garden, game-winning shot, and had an offer to go play at then what was the AVA, and decided to go into, business and become an entrepreneur. And so the legacy of Harbertsons in basketball has relatively been something. And so my dad, he just didn't have he never made the basketball team, but you know what? He came out on the court with me. He'd help shoot with me. We'd play, pig. We'd play lightning. Like he would do anything he could to support me and any one of my siblings and what our hobbies, likes, and interests were. And my dad was also very good at, like, the mentality of, like, you can't duck it, chuck it, right? Like he could fix anything. He was such a handyman, and I watched my dad fix everything in our house, and he was so frugal. Like the level of frugality of my father and the way in which he taught me how to do a checkbook and how to have checks and balances. And he would all the time be teaching me relatively like how to do business. I mean, my first business that I started because my dad said, "Why don't you go try this and see how it goes?" was I saw the girls up the street doing the lemonade stand, right? The quintessential lemonade stand, the greatest, easiest stand-up startup business in America, right, is the lemonade stand. It's where most of us even start when we ever start about thinking about doing a business. But I saw like an opportunity because of my love for hobbies, for cards and for sports, that I took my basketball cards and I put them in those brown paper bags, lunch bags, wrote $1 on them, taped them up, and I photocopied some cards that might be in there of like Michael Jordan, Steve Young at the time, and I went out on the corner and I sold card packs to the dads coming home from work while the girls up the street were selling lemonade to the moms. Then I realized, because my dad's like, "Well, how'd they go?" I was like, "Dude, I made like $10. I sold 10 packs." And he's like, "Okay, that's great." So that's, and we started talking about profit and like what it cost you. And then all of a sudden, my dad and I moved from my dad's like, "Well, now think about what else could you do that could attract?" And I'm like, "Well, they're selling lemonade, so why I should add that to my arsenal." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "So why don't you sell cards and lemonade? Now you're competing against them, but you have something else that you're offering that they don't have. So you'll be more attractive that way, right? You can now get both the dad coming home and the mom bringing kids home from school." Like, so I was like, "All right." So I add that, and all of a sudden, like, dude, more people are stopping on the corner. And then my mom's like, "Well, why don't we make some cookies? Like everybody loves cookies." And so then all of a sudden, like, dude, I've got this store. I'll never forget my table, dude. I've got my little table on the corner and I've got cookies, lemonade, and then I've got like these brown paper bags filled with random card packs, right, that I created myself. And that was my first business, and my dad helped me with that. And then from there on out, my dad and I actually went and started the next card business, which was, okay, do you remember the dispensing machines where you would put a quarter in and you'd turn it and then you could get like stickers or stuff would come
Yeah,
out of them?
tattoos, stickers.
Tattoo stickers and all that. So my dad invested in some of those machines and we retrofitted them to spit out basketball and cards. So like you'd have 3 rows of cards. We put a sheet of what could be inside. And I ended up putting those in Kaysville, if you remember where the Quiznos subs was. I had
Yeah.
one in Quiznos.
Taco
I had
time?
by Taco
Yeah,
Time.
no,
I
bro.
I put one in Taco Time. I had one at the time it was, I think, Little Caesars here in Farmington. So I had 3 machines. And then the owners said, totally just set them up. Like, we won't even take a cut of whatever you get. And I used to go around to each one of those machines, collect the quarters, restock the cards. And I learned, look at this. I don't have to be on a street corner right now, selling to them. I can show up where the customers are and I don't have to do anything. And they do the work and I make money. And so like all these simple principles my dad was teaching me, and we were doing these businesses together that ultimately. And so I think the other question that I want to answer that you asked is like, from a legacy perspective, as well as like as a father, like what do I feel like his legacy was or is and what he gave me? Number one, like my dad served, like he served his fellow man. Like there's not a person in my life that I can say that I feel like happily served. Like when he served as mayor of Farmington, he took no pay. So he didn't take, they usually have a salary set aside for, so he took those funds and he reinvested it in the city. Like he's like, I am serving Farmington. I love this city. I love this community. I want to give back to what it has given me. And that was in everything, in his religious responsibilities and duties, the same thing. He served everything. He served everyone. He emulated our Savior as much as anyone could that I can recall in my life. And that influence on me also was so impactful because I am the same way. I love to serve. And the way in which I love to serve is I love to build. I've always loved to build ever since I loved Legos, ever since I started doing businesses. But what I love to build most is people. And there's nothing that I find more satisfying and gratifying than building businesses that do that. And so the one other thing that I would say as a father that he said to me that forever, like just has always stayed with me is he would always tell me like, Jordan Harbertson, anybody who knows me, or if you've listened to any podcasts I've been on, I've been pretty vulnerable and open about like I've struggled with depression like my whole life. Like I've struggled with mental. People when they hear that, they're like, I don't get that. Jordan Harbertson's the happiest go lucky guy. Like he's always like high energy, and it's like that's who I am. I am that guy. But beneath me, there's a side of me that just struggles with things that I know many others do, and so I always had struggles with like self-worth, self-confidence. I was always relatively left out. I struggled with friends. Like I said, I struggled with friends. And so I was left out a lot and left behind and always questioning like my worth or my value. So I really had to be a nomad in a lot of ways, which is why my relative career started so early in my life. But my dad ingrained in me always, he's like, son, he's like, your attitude will always determine your altitude in life. And that was like a staple and a statement. And like, I always took that to heart because I knew he always would tell me, he's like, it's just your attitude, son. Like if you want to focus on this, you'll find what you're looking for. If you're looking for negative, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. But if you change the optics, if you look a little different and you find the good in everything and you be more optimistic about everything, you can find good in anything that's bad. And he's like, you hold on to that and then you build on that. And then you create momentum from that. And he says, your attitude will always change the altitude. If you want to live a good and happy and high life, your attitude determines that. If you want to
Sure.
be here, it's all mental. It's all your attitude and your perspective. And that really helped me start to fortify my own self ability to recognize my own worth, my own value, my own capabilities, irrespective of anyone else's point of view, anybody else's opinion of me. That gave me more ability and courage to do some of the very difficult things that I did to create a lot of the success that I've had. And so I'm very thankful to my dad for the sit down talks, for the hands on, and for subconsciously, but subliminally as well as intentionally teaching me the things that a father should teach his son or his daughter to be able to like survive and relatively, if you do it, thrive in life.
Yeah. Well, just hearing you, I mean, it's just a good reminder for us parents, whether you're a dad or a mom, just how much you can really influence your kids. And if we had a lot of time, I would love to hear what I find like you think about when we were growing up, cell phones like we didn't have smartphones when you and I like these stories that you're talking about. We had our Nokias and we were playing Snake.
In that two bit, you know,
Yeah.
a green and black screen,
Yeah.
right?
You
Like
had your
non
Nokia.
non we didn't have predicted text yet, right? Like we knew each letter with each associated number and how many times we had to press it in our pockets so the teachers wouldn't catch us when we were sending text to each other.
Yeah, and you had to pay for text messages, and
Every text that went in and out.
yeah, like, and I remember getting my parents getting a bill because I kind of, I don't know, I didn't tell them, and I signed up for a package, and the hundreds of dollars later, I'm texting all my friends. So, my question to you is, like, how can you and I today be present with how can we be present with our family and our friends? 'Cause it feels like that's a fundamental thing that was very prevalent in your dad, and I'm curious, how are you navigating that? Knowing you're starting businesses, you're thinking about businesses you're starting, you're on, different boards. Your time people are always wanting your time and money. It's gotta be hard, right? So, how do you navigate that? And
Yeah,
help Yeah.
that's a great question because it's something that I think is always a work in progress no matter what. Like it's the kind of it's kind of like if you know Ryan Holiday, he has the book called Obstacle is the Way, right? And I love Ryan Holiday. He's a stoic author, within the philosophies of like stoicism. And I'm actually reading Marcus Aurelius's book right now, Meditations. First time I've ever read it, and it's actually really incredible. Like, here is a man who is writing to himself that this was never meant for anyone. This was not meant for the reader. This was meant for the author. But yet, as the reader, you read some of these, entries and some of these thoughts that he had so stoically as emperor of Rome, and it gives you perspective because he breaks things down in such a linear but granular way of the simplicity of life and nature, and how nature always does what nature is going to do since the beginning until the end. There's nothing and no one that will change nature's process. However, there are things that we as individuals and humans will do and create unnatural reactions. But when we interact with nature and we do something unnatural, it has a cause and a direct reaction to that, and it's up to us to figure out how we start to work within the framework of really the rhythm and flow of life. And so when you correlate that to being a father, like, what being a father from the, let's call it, the days of Adam to the days of Brian and Jordan have not changed. It's been the same duties, responsibilities from the beginning, and it will be until the end. And I think when we think about the natural order of being a father and what that means, like, it's having posterity, it's having children, it's having responsibilities as a father to influence for good these children and prepare them for life as nature prepared you with your father before. Hopefully, again, and I understand not everybody had a father, but the figure or the mentality of fatherhood is definitely something that I would say when we're trying to show up and be present for our kids. I still, because I'm always living in the future, I still struggle with this, but I've gotten a lot better because I've created habits and I've stacked those habits and I've prioritized that. I realize that there's no amount of business and success that I can cultivate in my life that's more important than the time that I have with my kids. And I'm very obsessed with time and not money, but I understand the direct and immediate correlation that those two have, because when somebody, quote, has more money, they've unlocked more time, right? But a lot of people will spend a majority of their life chasing money and spending all their time to get it. And then when they have it, they have no more time. And so I think being present changes the mentality of, like, no matter how much money you have or don't have, what you always have relatively is time. We were born billionaires with a lot of time. And as we get older, that reserve, right, that bank account gets a lot smaller, and the amount of time that we have to spend, but where we choose to spend it, who we choose to spend it with, that's always ours. That is nobody's right but yours. You may allocate your time and commit that to an employer, and so you've committed a certain portion of your time that you have to give that employer because that's what the contract or that's what the commitment was. But as soon as you fulfill your commitment, you now have your time back and you can choose how after work you want to spend it. And I think the thing that my dad did so well, even as an entrepreneur with his big business and all the employees that he had and people he took care of, was he was very present in those moments with me. And I'm trying to do that right now with my son Peyton. He's my carbon copy. He looks just like me and he acts just like me, and it freaks me out. But I'm like, my son Kenton, my daughter Aniston, and my youngest son Lincoln. Like, I think I've found a rhythm right now, and I found myself back in the natural process and the natural order of things that I was doing so many unnatural things fighting against nature that as I've become more close to nature's process of being a father and what that means, it started to become, I'm not going to say easy because it's not, but it's become more habitual for me to be here for my family. Because I will tell you, Brian, like during those mountain ops years, I've shared this with a lot of people. I became obsessed with my business. I became obsessed with the success. I was also genuinely enjoying the journey of what we were creating and what we were disrupting and how we were doing it. And it was so like euphoric, like the euphoria that surrounded those first like 6 years of the business. And my family got left behind. I was not a present father. I was not focusing on my kids. In my mind, this is what we all do as fathers. I was justifying a lot of things I was doing at that time out of a necessity to provide for my family, which is not a false thing to and thought to have. But I also wasn't prioritizing my family. I was justifying going out and spending time with celebrities and going on all these hunts and like doing all these things that I literally was like, my wife almost, I mean, my wife wanted to divorce me. She's just like, "Do you love me or do you love your business?" And I was like, "But I have the business because I love you guys and I'm giving, I'm trying to build a big life." And that was when I was, my 20s and my early 30s. And I think now that I'm 39 and I've kind of right on the doorstep of 40, it's always been told to me, in your 20s, you relatively grind. I mean, we're talking about the grindstone. 30s where you hustle and you get smarter, and 40s where you chill. If you've done everything right within the first, relative 2 decades of those 2 years, of which you and I both know are your best years because you have the most energy, the most hustle, the most grind. You can do an all nighter, wake up the next day with 1 hour of sleep and nothing changed. Like you have adamantium in your body, like Wolverine. You can regenerate quickly. When we get to this side, it doesn't regenerate as fast. Things are slowing down relatively within what we are mentally and physically capable of relatively doing upon that which we are naturally able, right? There's a natural order to that, but I think when I really take everything that you just asked and I'm bringing this all together, it's like it's not that complicated, and I think we as fathers really complicate it. Showing up is what they need. Like that's what they need from us. They need us to be there.
Mhm.
And that I think, Brian, is like what's changed in my life as a father, having such a good father and such a good role model and example is I feel like I'm finally becoming a fraction of what my father was to me for my children. And I think for me, sorry to get emotional, but like um I think that's what's so important is like the influence of a father in your child's life is one of the most important things because there are two significant roles that are played out in a family. It's a father and it's a mother. And the role that a mother plays is the most important role because it is literally the most stable, steady Eddie, tried and true, consistent role that the family has. It's what foundationally holds the family together. And the father, because of our natural responsibilities and duties, we are supposed to go out and provide. We're supposed to go out and come back, go out and come back. And in quote, traditional family, the mother is always there, raising and rearing the kids. And so I think when we go out and we provide for the village or we provide for our family, we come back with what we've gathered. We need to remember that now we need to take what we've gathered, put that aside, and gather with our family, be present with our children, and take every opportunity we can to share with them and teach them the things that we have learned. Here's the thing that I want to tell you, Brian, that in total transparency with my father, and maybe I don't know if this is how you were with your dad. I feared my father. Like fear and love existed in my relationship with my dad. Like I feared disappointing him. I feared breaking any rules because I was supposed to be an obedient, child or whatnot.
Mhm.
And I never saw a blemish on my dad. Like, and when my dad, it wasn't until I got back from my mission that my dad finally opened up to me and told me things that he had done wrong in his life. And I was like, dude, where was this when I was feeling like the way I was feeling when I would make a big mistake or I was going through this? And, he would always be encouraging. He'd always, try and help me out. But that's the difference between me and my father today is I recognize that I want to be a very open and transparent father with my children, meaning that when they make mistakes, I want to tell them the exact mistakes I made too, so that they don't view me as something that's not achievable, or when they compare, because we have a natural tendency in our adolescence to do that. We're comparing ourselves to adults who have a lot of years. That comparison is, oh, my dad did this too, or my dad went through this too, or okay, so he understands me. And it's like that ability to have empathy, both extended and received, is a beautiful thing. And so like, especially with my son now who's 14, like I would argue we taught in a way that I never did talk with my dad. And that's just our relationship. I'm not submitting to anyone who's listening to this podcast that I have the way and the playbook to be a great dad. I think I figured out how to be the great dad that I need to be for my kids and the relationship that I need to have with them. And that's interdependent of everyone else and how they want to do it. But this is what's worked for me and is working for us. And so I know that's a very relative long answer, but just trying to get back to the root of your great question about how do we how do we do how do we be good fathers? I
Yeah.
think there's so many ways to answer that. That's probably how I'll answer that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answer was sufficient, helpful, or
Well,
provided any meaningful.
I appreciate, when I made the decision to start this podcast, I mean, there's a million you in preparation. I mean, you've been on a lot of podcasts, and there are a lot of business podcasts, and I love business and I want to talk about business. But what I have really enjoyed about these conversations, and I appreciate it, Jordan, that people get vulnerable. And I'm finding that these conversations are leading more towards spirituality and things that matter, which is family. Like the three pillars of my BG show, like faith, family, and business. And I think the big takeaway, hopefully, and people listening is like, it is not easy starting a business. I mean, looking back, yeah, maybe you feel bad you weren't as present, but it is what it is. It was what it was, and it's not easy. But what I find is the people that I'm interviewing, it's like family and God are most important, and I think we're all in it together, and I think we all need to give ourselves some grace. And
Mhm.
I think we all struggle a little bit, and
Well,
we're
and the
just
one thing you just said that I really like was, and I think, wouldn't you agree that, like, perspective, right?
mhm,
Perspective is only gained with time. And as
yeah,
we get farther away from the things that we look back on and say, oh, I wish I would have done that different. Now I would say this. So now that it's been, let's call it 6 years since, we transacted a significant sell of Mountain Ops to a private equity company. I took steps back from the company and started building other things and starting a new path and new ventures. I look back now, and I've shared this with my wife. I says, and she now adequately, like, shares it with me too, because again, when you're in the moment of it, it's raw, it's real, it's what it is. But as you get away from it, depending on how you deal with it, the success that I've created has allowed and afforded me more money. And because of that money, I get to choose who and what and how I will spend my time. And now I get to spend all my time with my kids. And so this is the thing that my wife said to me that I'm like, okay, that's powerful. I wish I would have heard that back then, but I heard it now. She's like, and I want to share with my wife because she's also been one of the most influential people in my life. And she's literally been my queen. Like, I could never build the kingdom that we've built together without her. Like, her guidance, her support, her perspective, like her intercession, like her, like, intervening, like her perspective and how she's guided me in business decisions is like the best counselor, advisor, mentor you could ever have. Like, I'm so grateful for her. And one of the things that she asked me, it was so funny. The other day, she got a call from her cousin. Her cousin's husband is thinking about starting a business. and being an entrepreneur. And so she's scared. She's scared because she's like, he has a secure job. This thing is so uncertain. This thing, and they're relatively young. And she's like, I wanted to call you and Jordan, and I wanted to get your opinion and get your advice because you've been through this. And my wife's first initial reaction was like, well, yeah, let me just give the phone to my husband and he'll kind of give you. And I looked at her and I said, whoa, you don't you don't need, she's not asking for my perspective. Jordan, she's a mother. She's going to have a husband who wants to be an entrepreneur. She needs to hear your perspective, your advice. What would you give her? Because you've been this. Don't ask me. My opinion merits nothing in this conversation. And she kind of like had a moment. She goes, oh yeah, okay, well, I'm going to share and so one of the things that she shared with her that I was like, babe, that's so profound. I wish I had that perspective back then. Was she's like, you are so young right now. Your children don't know and they don't need their father. They need their mother. But there will come a time when they need their father. And when they need their father, as they get to those older ages, that they become more susceptible to the influence, they're more spongy and they're able to soak in what father can give them. Hopefully, with all the years that you sacrificed relatively entrepreneurially or career-wise to start, that he had to be away from your family, he can now be here all the time. And
Right.
and and I never thought about that way as she said it out loud. I was like, not this, and I don't want this to come off to anyone saying you should just literally abandon your family and not be there. You need to be there, but like the kids are so young in those first 4 to 5 years, right? 6 years. It's when they start getting to that 8, 9, 10 plus, we start getting to double digits. The influence of a father is so vital. And so if you are young enough in your life cycle and your family cycle that you can give yourself to an opportunity to start something or to create something or to be part of something or make a big significant career change, hopefully you can do it at a time when, quote, the kids don't need you as much. They need their mother. Like
Mm.
when they are born and they're babies, they don't need us, right? They
Yeah,
need mom.
sure.
And so, but later in life, they really need us. And so if we can create a life that gives us and affords us more time later in life, I now am grateful that I have the time I have because I spend it all with my kids. I would say I'd say right now my time blocking is like 60-40. It's 40% business and what I do on a daily basis and 60% family now. Like I've prioritized a larger and a majority share of my time is to my family and a minority stake goes to everyone else. And that's how it should be. But I didn't have it that way before.
That's
So
cool, man. Well, it's inspiring, and I know, um, obviously, my in-laws have been very successful, and what I'm noticing about, like, people like you and your wife, like, successful entrepreneurs that are married, they do need a spouse that is super supportive, and I think it's really difficult if a spouse that's not all in with the entrepreneur, and, it's really cool hearing that. If you have time for one more question, um one thing we didn't get into, but I admire the way that you guys built the Mountain Ops brand, and you've been involved with other brands and you're building brands today. I think the la my last question I'd like to end this conversation is like, when you think about all the things you've learned about branding, for our listeners that are building a brand today and thinking about launching their brand or rebranding, in the environment that we live in today and how business is being done today, what's one piece of advice or a principle that you think is the most important when it comes to building a brand that that could be a good takeaway from this conversation?
that's a great question. Um, I think for anything to survive, because everything naturally within nature will face adversity. In order for anything to grow, it requires pain. Pain is imminent. And it's one of the things that as humans try to run away from or try to avoid. And yet it's the only path to progress. It's the only path to growth. Pain is essential. Now, one thing that I've learned in life is that there's two types of pain. There's essential pain and non-essential pain. And the essential pain is that we naturally are going to grow in life. Whether you like it or not, you are going to receive and naturally feel and experience pain based on the natural process of how life goes. There are things that you can do and things that are of your own choice that can create non-essential pain. The same thing is true when you're building a business or you're building a brand. Like, it's essential that this business is going to face adversity and overcome a lot of obstacles in order to become something that it has the potential to be. But it will require at the very, very start, or the very onset, a strong why. Why am I doing this? If it is purely for the fact that you want to just have a business and have a product and feel and look cool to your peers, that is a meaningless business that will have no meaning to it, rather than it just provides a relative service and maybe makes a profit if you're fortunate enough. But if you can build a strong why for why you're doing it, and if that why is rooted within human elements, mainly human interaction and human development, then I believe through that process of having a strong why that's on the basis of helping others, you can create a brand that you then will develop bonding to individuals, and that will become what I like to call brand bonding, because what we did at Mountain Ops was truly special. And as intentionable as it was, the thing that I focused on so finitely in what we were doing was we focused, and I will tell you this, I never in my first 6 years of that business, and I'm not saying that this is just my journey, so don't take this, everyone that listens, is like, oh, I shouldn't look at an Excel spreadsheet. I didn't look at Excel. I didn't look at the spreadsheet. I didn't look at the numbers. I didn't care. I didn't care about the profit. I cared about the people. When I saw an opportunity to build a company in a market that I adored and had been grown up in, because my dad took us outdoors, we hunted, like it was a big part of our family. And then I had an opportunity with my partners to create something very disruptive and different and categorically new. I wanted to change people's lives. And so that MO shield that Mountain Ops represents was a mark and a mission with a very strong why to improve the lives of individuals and families through these incredible products and experiences that Mountain Ops would create. As we said, our tagline that we came up with was conquer more. Right. And the whole intentionality behind that was to directly take the individual and put within themselves, finish the sentence yourself. What is it that you want to, quote, conquer more of in your life? Whatever that word is that comes after more, we have the tools, we have the means, and we have the community and ability to help you to achieve more of what it is you want to conquer. And that ability to create such brand bonding with our community created, as I always tell people, crusaders. Like, you want to know how to create success for your company? Get your own customers to sell your own product instead of having to pay. I am so sick. I am sick and tired of CAC. I'm sick and tired of AOV. I'm sick and tired of CPA. I'm sick and tired of all the acronyms that measure the success of a business. If you want to have a successful business, focus on the number one thing that matters. PEOPLE. We are humans, and artificial intelligence, as awesome as it's becoming and as rapidly as it's getting integrated into business, cannot, no matter how big it gets, no matter how much it gets integrated, just like how the internet created a whole new way of us doing businesses with email and connectivity, and then social media was that next big boom, and now we're at the intelligence boom of AI. Guess what has never been removed from every boom and cannot? The human element. So if you want to build a great company, if you want to have an amazing brand, focus everything that you're doing, the why behind what you're doing, how you're going to do it, and then what you're going to do to achieve that, about the people that you're going to serve, about the people that you're going to create a service for, about the people that you're going to build products for, and then get to know your people. And just like a father to his children, show up. Show up for your people wherever your market is, whatever the company is that you want to start and wherever you want to start it. Digital is great. I have had a tremendous amount of success with digital marketing, but you can never replace offline marketing, as I call it. There's online and there's offline. Offline is in person expos, events, and showing up and being there and having human interaction and building relationships that will forge bonds to your brand and create community around your belief. And it is your beliefs and your values within your business and your brand that will go out and they will crusade for you. Right. I always tell people we built a cult at Mountain Ops. I'm talking like, dude, it was like ride or die. As soon as a guy showed me he had a tattoo, I was like, we've arrived. Like, people are tattooing our brand on them. That is insane. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's when I was like, we've arrived. Like, we have a guy that tattooed,
Yeah.
So again, like, the human element is so important in I get the reporting, I get the data, I get the analysis, I get all of that. That's important. But what I think sometimes happens with leaders and with individuals starting their companies, and some of the advice I hear other advisors, mentors giving, what's your CAC? What's your this? What's this? It's like, for me, I break it down very simply. How many people have you talked to today? How many people did you go? We want to talk knocking doors because there's the door knocking business. How many doors did you knock today? How many calls did you make? How many people did you see on the street? Did you actually go ask them, hey, do you like this? Do you want to try my product? Like, how many people did you just talk to today? That's a metric. That's a number that should be the first and number one metric that you have. Like, Phil Knight talks about it in his book, The Shoe Dog. I'm actually re-listening to it right now, and that's one of the things that he brought up was just like how important in those early days. At the time, it was called Blue Ribbon, was his first business when he was building this, making the shoes or being a distributor for the shoes in Japan to America for track and field, and just how important the relationship was. And Johnson, who was his first employee, he said Johnson had a index of cards of every single person he had ever talked to or ever sold a shoe to. He had their name, he had their number, he had something that they liked about them, and he would go through that Rolodex of actual customers that were written on,
Three by
postcards,
five cards, man.
three by fives, and he would call and he would interact with the customers, because this is all before predated relative internet, predated, this is the 60s. So
Yeah. No CRM.
no CRM. There's no CRM. There's no, LTV. There's no, that they were working so rudimentary, but yet that level of business practice and the basics of that are still what we need today. So that's what I would say. And again, I know that's kind of a big relative answer, but if I was to distill all what I said down to one, I'd say why.
Yeah.
Ask yourself that question, because when the tailwinds aren't there and the headwinds are always there, you will have to have a strong enough why to overcome any and every obstacle that you will imminently face, both as a business owner, entrepreneur, career, doesn't matter. Like, you have to have a personal and strong why, and then build that same why into your brand's why, then never deviate from it. As Coach Down said, don't derail the train. Get the train on the tracks, keep it there, build that locomotive with momentum, keep shoveling coal and fire it up, and just let it ride.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, this has been a super inspiring conversation. I really appreciate you sharing, just being vulnerable, being emotional, sharing
Yeah, sorry to get
everything.
the waterworks, bro.
No, dude,
Gosh,
I've had,
dude.
you're not the only one. And I can't tell you, like, it's hard to do it virtually. And I'm in a place where I'm trying to think about how to build like an in-place studio. But I want to create an environment where people can get emotional, because I don't know. We're all human, and it's just like I want to talk about those things that create emotion versus just like, how'd you grow Mountain Ops and what did you sell it for and how did you think about selling it? It's like I don't
I've
want to
been on
talk.
plenty of those podcasts,
Yeah, like
right?
I'm.
Like, we
Yeah,
you can go Google me. Like, you can go
yeah,
hear that story.
yeah.
But like, this is powerful. I always love conversations like this that just flowed the way it did, and the meaningful questions that you asked that really provoked deeper thought to answer those questions that are gonna, if you're willing to open oneself up, be vulnerable, and understand that, you know, we all have made mistakes. We're continually going to make them. We're trying to get better. Failure is a process. It's essential. We've got to learn. Those lessons are only learned through failure. But I think if I could tell everyone what I love about your show and from all the episodes I watched that only affirms what you just said is Brian has an innate ability to open people up because you're genuine, bro. Like that's the thing that all of us from high school to today loved about you was you have always been who you are unapologetically, but yet you have always been compassionate. You've always been thoughtful of others and considerate of feelings. Like I remember situations where in high school someone was being made fun of or somebody was getting, you know, was being rude. And there's BG to like be like, hey man, it's okay. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about that. Like you were always one to put your arm around another and encourage them and tell them that it's going to be okay and to be supportive. And so to have a show now that you've developed and you're building that emulates the best parts of you and allowing guests to come on here and be able to get, as you said, well, like open up and have a real deep, meaningful conversation. Because for you and me, we've both been energized, edified, and inspired together by just talking and having this conversation. And I hope it will do the same for those who will listen or participate in it in any way. But kudos to you, dude. Like it's genuine, it's authentic, so it will be successful because it's
Yeah.
again, it's who you are, man.
Well, I appreciate that. Dude, that means a lot, man. It means a lot, and, I love you. I'm cheering you on, and I just thank you for being on. I hope you have a beautiful day.
You too, brother. Appreciate you too, man. All the love.
Alright, peace.